Good evening and welcome to what I hope will be a wonderful time of studying another chapter in the book of Genesis. We'll be looking specifically at the call of Abraham, starting here in Genesis chapter 12. If you have not read that chapter, please stop the video now and read the chapter and come back and join us. Okay, let's now start our study on the life of Abraham. Let's go first to the word of prayer, okay? In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for tonight. We thank you for you, and we thank you for this time. We can be together to just delve into your word. We thank you so much for your word. I thank you for the impact you have used it to have on my life, and that you're using the life of these others as well. Father, I pray tonight that east and north, and west and south, you surround us with so many angels on your spirit gets anywhere near us. And I pray that your spirit, which flows through Jesus Christ, will now be with us, and as you used the Spirit to write the Bible, now you have the Spirit to illuminate the Bible for each and every one of us. Father, we love you and pray these things always in the name of Jesus. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, before going to chapter 12 of Genesis, let's do a little recap of what we've seen so far in the book of Genesis. First of all, we've seen this, is that although God created everything in a state of blessedness, everything was so good. In fact, he said it was very good. He blessed everything. From that point on, it seemed like everything has been a disaster. Shortly after the creation of Adam and Eve, you have Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit. This plunges the whole universe, not just the two of them, but all generations after them of people, plus the physical universe, into a time of darkness. The curse has fallen upon the universe. Whereas now, Adam and Eve just eat the forbidden fruit, which is really bad. Their sons experience something worse. Cain is jealous because God accepts his brother's sacrifice, Abel, his brother, and he therefore kills him, murders him. So we've gone now from eating forbidden fruit to actual murder. Again, things continue just to spiral downwards. It gets so bad that eventually, by the time you get to Genesis chapter 6, you have now the demonic world is now infiltrating the world of humans, and it's actually trying to possess humans. Basically, it's going to be a parody, a mockery of what God is doing in the incarnation, having him unite us with him. Okay, so they're trying to unite people with the demonic realm. It's so bad, God says, okay, that's enough. I've got to wipe out the world of mankind. But because of the faithfulness of Noah and his righteousness, God saves Noah, his wife, 3 sons plus their wives. Okay, you would think at that point, people would really change. Everybody's wiped out except for Noah and his family. After the flood subside, Noah comes out and plants a garden and gets drunk, exposes himself. At that point, Ham shames him instead, his son shames him instead of covering him up. He goes and basically mocks him to his brothers. After that, Noah finds out what happens. He curses Canaan, who is Ham's son. Again, things continue to spiral downward. We finally get to chapter 11, and we're seeing here the story of the Tower of Babel. It looks like Nimrod, who is the leader of these people at this time. He is a mighty hunter. He's very aggressive, and it appears that he's leading his people to stay together and doing a project, building the Tower of Babel, in which they will use it to assault the gates of heaven. God says enough is enough. He confuses them in their language, and therefore they're being scattered. It looks like the whole creation project has been a complete failure. One thing we have to ask ourselves is this: why did things go wrong? Not simply with Adam and Eve, okay? I'm going to give them a little slack here, but Noah. Noah has seen God's mighty hand of salvation. He has cleansed the world of all this unrighteousness. When it was all said and done, he saw the mighty hand of God, his salvation, and yet it's not long after this mighty act of salvation that Noah screws up, and it leads to then again curse, and things go downward again. The issue is this, is that you can wipe out the world all you want, but if people don't change, things are not going to change. You can have all the laws you want, you can have all the police you want, You can basically shame people, but when it's all said and done, if people don't change themselves internally, there will be no change externally. So this becomes the issue, and this is the issue that God is going to be addressing from here on out in the Bible. It is in the story of Abraham. We'll call him Abram at the beginning, and later on we'll see his name is changed to Abraham. God will change it. We're seeing here now the major change, a new chapter in the history of mankind. We're going to see a great promise given to Abram, again later on he'll call it Abraham. So if I call him Abraham, I don't, just bear with me, okay? I'll try and stay true to the text as much as possible. We're seeing here this great promise given to Abram. This is the greatest promise in the Bible. In fact, the New Testament, the work of Christ, is really the fulfillment of this great promise that God is going to give to Abram. Now look, before we go any further, look at the emphasis here on God using an individual. So many times people think that God cannot use them. Or, I'm just a small, insignificant figure, and how can God use me? Well, first of all, God doesn't really use committees. He doesn't do that. I mean, if you want to slow down a project, a process, get a committee together, especially diverse minds there, nothing will get changed. It'll go very, very slowly. When you look at the Bible, it's always individuals that God chooses, he uses. For example, Adam, he's going to use Noah. He's going to use Abraham. He's going to use Joseph. He'll use Moses. Joshua. Now, they're leaders and they're making decisions. They're being very decisive as God is using them. And so, again, it's this emphasis on the individual. And there's many times we're seeing throughout history that the idea of individualism is being crushed. And you're seeing this happening a lot today in our own society, where the individual is being squashed and the corporate or the government is getting so much larger, and the result is, again, it's putting down the individual. But God works through individuals. It's not to put down the idea we're part of a body, but the individual is very, very important in God's work of salvation. Now look right here at the map. We're seeing here a map that Abram, according to Genesis chapter 12, starting in chapter 11 and continuing through chapter 12, he's living in what's called Ur of the Chaldees. The Chaldees are basically the predecessors of the Babylonians. Okay, Ur is here, you see on the map. It is in the very southern tip of modern day Iraq. And this is where God is going to appear to Abraham and give him this tremendous promise. Now let's look at this promise that God has given to Abram. It says here that the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. And the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you all the families are there blessed." Okay, let's look a little closer at this promise, okay? Again, this is the great promise in the Old Testament. You can look, for example, in Galatians chapter 3. Paul is really going to be going back to this promise that God has given to Abraham here. Look, if you look at this promise very quickly, look, you're seeing one word especially sticks out. It's the key word, the operative word in this promise. It is the word bless. God says, "I will bless you, Abraham, and make your name great," etc. "And you shall be a blessing. And I'll bless those who bless you." Should have highlighted that. "And the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So we're seeing that the word bless, or its cognate, is used 5 times here in the promise God makes to Abraham. Now, what do we mean by the word bless? Okay, unfortunately, many times, especially in my classrooms, I'm seeing it used mainly as a way to say something after somebody sneezes. Somebody sneezes and the whole room almost erupts into "God bless you." I think they do that mainly to irritate me, and it works. It irritates me. But it's really neat. Sometimes I will go into the deli, and there's a wonderful lady there. She's African American. And every time I see her, I ask her how she's doing. If she says, "Oh, I'm having a blessed day," and you have a blessed day too. That's more what we're talking about here. Basically, the definition of the word bless is talking about welfare, your health, long life, prosperity, the good things, the benefits of God's grace upon your life. My life basically becomes a synonym for the benefits of salvation, almost a synonym for salvation itself. So therefore, when God says he's going to bless Abraham, it means that God is going to bring salvation to Abraham. It also says he's going to bless his descendants. We'll see how this works in just a moment. Let's go back and look a little bit further about what God said to Abram. He told him that he was going to bless him and he was going to make of him a great nation, and that God would bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. Basically, this is a promise that is extended to Abraham and to his generations. We'll see more about this later as we look at the story of Abraham. Now, I will say this, and I hope everybody take listen very carefully to what I'm saying. God's blessing is upon Abraham and his descendants, and the one specifically that he blesses is going to be the Jew, the Jewish race. It's very important, and you need to understand this, that you need to be very careful of the anti-Jewishness emerging in our society called anti-Semitism. We see this emerging a lot in Western Europe. Many Jews who lived in Paris, France for a long time, Germany, they're now fleeing and going to Israel. You're seeing many Jews being mistreated now in New York City. Gangs are beating up on the Jews. On the college campuses, there are a lot of people who are now going against the Jews, condemning the Jews, Israel, etc. I just want to say, don't go there. You do not want to go there. These are descendants of Abraham, and when it's all said and done, God's blessing is going to be upon the Jew. Now, this anti-Semitism, this anti-Jewishness going on is nothing new. Probably since the last 1700 years, when Christianity became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire, that things got really rough for the Jews. Not true in every case, but they're true in a lot of cases. That is very, very unfortunate. Many times we think that the Holocaust, which occurred in Germany, leading up to World War II and including World War II, was really the only really bad time for the Jews. That's just not right. Like I said, it's been going on for 1,700 years in many parts of even the Christian world. If everyone would watch a great movie, it's a very sad movie, but it's a great movie. It's a musical. It's called Fiddler on the Roof. It tells a story of a Jewish man living in Anatevka in Russia. Just a good man, just trying to eke out a living for his family, his wife and 3 daughters, actually 4 daughters. It was all said and done, it was just a hard time for the Jews there. At the very end, though, one of the pogroms is enacted against the Jews, and Tev and his family are forced to flee Russia and then go to New York City. They don't show them in New York City, but they're on the way to the West. The mistreatment of the Jews is very tragic. It's unnecessary. And God is not pleased with those who mistreat the Jews. It doesn't mean you always have to agree with them. It doesn't mean you always have to agree with every policy that the state of Israel is trying to implement. But it does mean this: be careful, respect them, support them as much as possible. And God's favor will be upon you. I really believe this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you this. I believe one of the main reasons that the United States has done so well has been because the United States has been the primary supporter and ally of the nation of Israel. Because of the United States, from a human perspective, Israel is still in existence today. Please, let's not incur God's wrath by turning against Israel and by turning against the Jew. Although this is not stated specifically in this promise that God gave Abram in the first 3 verses of Genesis 12, according to St. Paul, something is inferred by this promise. God promises to bless all people through Abraham. All the nations of the world are going to experience God's blessing. Basically, salvation is going to be offered. The same one offered to Abraham is going to be offered to all the nations of the world, all peoples around the world, throughout all time. It's a universal promise given specifically to Abraham, but which will impact everybody else. The issue then becomes, according to St. Paul, that the way I accept or receive the salvation, it must be by faith and not by law. There are many Jews who believe still today that by keeping the law, a person is therefore saved, comes into right relationship with God. There are several issues with this Paul discusses in Romans and also in Galatians, but according to St. Paul, the idea that keeping the law of Moses is the way to be saved would basically contradict what God is doing here in this promise God makes. You see, if God is going to save all people or offer salvation to everybody, then there must be a way that everybody has access to in order to receive the salvation. Well, there's a problem with the law. The law was given only to the Jews, and really for basically almost, let's say, 2,000 years, is that only Jews had the law. Really, 3,000 years, only the Jews had the law. And therefore, it means that nobody can be saved except for the Jews. Well, that contradicts what God is saying in this promise. There must be a way for all people to be able to access this salvation. And because all people can exercise faith, and they may not have the law, they can exercise faith. The result is God offers everybody the salvation and they receive it, not by keeping laws, which they've had no access to, but instead by receiving it by faith, which everyone has an access to. So God now makes his promise to Abram, and Abram obeys. He's going to follow God and do what God had told him to do. He will obey him, but not completely. First of all, remember it said in the promise that God said you need to leave your home, you need to leave your relatives, okay? Now he's married, so he's not going to leave his wife, but every other relative he's to leave, and he does not leave all his relatives. Instead, he's first of all going to take Terah, his father, and Terah is actually going to lead to, his being there is going to lead to some delay in Abraham's obedience. Terah will go with him, and Terah gets very ill. He's going to die. And you're going to have Abram there stopping in the northern part of Canaan there in Haran in order to bear his father, mourn his father, etc. Okay? But also, maybe he can make an excuse for Terah. Okay? But fine. But he also takes his relative, his nephew Lot. That's going to be a problem. Okay? He's a relative. He should not have gone. Now, he will take Eleazar. He'll also later have his son Ishmael. And you're going to find out in the story of Abraham that God is going to make these tremendous promises to Abraham. Again, Abram now. He's making these promises to him. And Abraham believes, but he's always got something to hedge his bets. Make sure that if God doesn't come through, then he's got a backup plan. Okay, plan A is God's plan. He's great. God's plan, that's what I want to do. But if it doesn't work, I've got plan B there in the wings. Don't have plan B. If God reveals something to you, then you need to respond positively to what God is communicating to you. Now, he may not communicate it just to you. Many times he'll give confirmations to other people, but make sure you're obeying him. Because Abram does not obey God completely, there'll be trouble down the road. But anyway, he's now going to obey, at least to the point where he will follow God to a land that God will show him. Okay, here's a map now of Abram's journey from Ur of the Chaldees up to the land of Canaan. Ur of the Chaldees is here in to the right center. You see where the line begins. This is Ur of the Chaldees. He'll go northwest into the area of Nineveh. This is Assyria, the kingdom of Assyria you'll read about later in the Bible. Then he'll shoot west, and he will go towards the land of Canaan, and then shoot down south into Canaan itself. Now, why does he take this route? Basically, he takes this route because he's avoiding the Arabian desert. Look at the map again. You're seeing very clearly that there is this massive desert there. Now, this is a long way around, but it does avoid the desert. Number one. Number two is there are a lot of rivers along this route and also oases where they can refresh their cattle, etc. Okay, now this is the major trade route from China and India all the way up and through to Egypt. Okay, and look to the upper left-hand corner, you see Turkey. Further left would be Greece. Again, these major civilizations, the Greek civilization, Mycenaean at this point, also the Hittite civilization in Turkey, they will come then towards Canaan and go through Canaan on the way to Egypt. So what you're seeing right here is that God is leading Abram to the crossroads of the world. Everybody is going through Canaan in order to get to Egypt. Now, why do they want to go to Egypt? Well, first of all, Egypt wants to buy silks from China and spices from India for mummification. They need spices, they need silks for mummification. Next is this. Egypt is wealthy. It's half of civilization probably at this point in time. And they are the portal, the gateway to the wealth of Africa. All its jewels, the gold, the exotic animals, etc. You name it. It's all flowing through Egypt. So it's really interesting. Somebody said this one time, well, trust God to put the Jews in the only one place in the entire Middle East which has no oil. Okay, there's no oil. Okay, that's fine. But you know what it is? It is the crossroads of the world. At this point in time, people are talking religion. They are all going through Canaan, and the Jews are going to settle there. Abraham first, later Moses will bring the Jews after their sojourn in Egypt, and they're there, and all the peoples of the world are going through Canaan, and the Jews should be sharing their knowledge of God with these people and bringing people to the knowledge of God. So therefore, this is the major reason that God is taking them to Canaan. Now go first again, they leave from go north to Nineveh, go then west, and then a little bit south at Haran. That's where Terah is going to die. There's going to be a delay there. Terah dies, and at this point here in Haran, God is going to reissue the call to Abram to come to the land to which he'll show him, and he'll lead him then to the land of Canaan. So Abram continues to follow God. God is going to lead him south, and his family is flocked there to the land of Canaan, which is modern-day Israel. There at Bethel, between Bethel and Ai, Abram is going to offer sacrifice to God, because it is here that God says, this is the land I will give you and your descendants, not just to Abram, but to his descendants as well. So in this promise, in this communication of God to Abram, God is saying two things. First of all is this. This is it. This is the land. This is where I'm taking you, okay? This is where I want you to stay. Number two, you will have children. Now, this is stunning because Abram is 75 years old and his wife Sarah is 65 years old. Back then, that's still not too old to have children. Now, they're getting up to the stage where they cannot have children. They'll both be dead reproductively, but they're not at the stage yet. But it's here that God is going to expand that promise and say, basically, the promise is going to be for you. It includes the land. It includes children. Here in Canaan, which is today modern-day Israel. So God has led Abram now from Ur of the Chaldees all the way up north through Assyria, then south down to Canaan. And there at Canaan, God is going to say, this is the land I'll give you. Again, Abram's going to worship God and make a sacrifice there between Bethel and Ai. You see this on the map here. Now a famine hits the land of Canaan. It's pretty severe. Now God said, Canaan is where I'm taking you. The famine hits. So what does Abram do? Does he stay in Canaan, to the land that God told him to go to? No, he's not going to stay there. Instead, he's going to go to Egypt. Notice something very important here. God did not instruct Abram to go to Egypt. He looked at the situation he's facing, the famine, and goes, well, I got to go somewhere else and get my flocks watered, to get more grain, and it's not here, therefore I will go to Egypt. He does not trust that God will provide for him in Canaan, where God led him. Instead, he takes matters in his own hand, and he's now going to go to Egypt, and this will cause some severe problems. Now, to understand what happens in the next episode, you need to understand this. You need to know what kind of person we're dealing with here when we look at Abram. Abram many times is depicted in TV series or maybe movies as being basically a pauper. He may have a few tents, etc., and just some sheep. That's not Abram. If you've ever seen the movie Lawrence of Arabia, you'll see a character there by the name of Abu Abdai. He is a sheikh of a major tribe there in Arabia. He's got many warriors at his disposal. He's got a harem. He has got now flocks. He's almost like the general of an army. He's like a petty king of a small kingdom. That is what Abram is like. Later we'll see he actually has an army of 300 fighting men. That does not include their wives, their children. It does not include maybe older people, servants who are attached to the household who cannot fight. But he has 300 fighting men alone. So he's got at least probably 1,000 people who are operating with him. So the result is when Abram goes into Egypt, it's not like you or I, we drive our car up to Oklahoma and nobody knows we arrive. He is an important figure. It's like a multimillionaire, a billionaire going from Canaan into Egypt. And he's going to attract the attention of notable people, especially the ruler of Egypt, the Pharaoh. Okay, so we have Abraham now going into Egypt. Okay, and he's not going as like you and I would, probably 2 or 3 in a car and nobody notices us. This is like a multi-millionaire, maybe a billionaire going into a major country and everybody's noticing his arrival. Well, Abram goes, I've got a problem. Okay, I'm going to be noticed. And that's not bad in and of itself. The problem is my wife, Sarah, is very beautiful. And Pharaoh is going to take one look at my wife and go, wow, I need her for my wife, or bring her into my harem. But she's married to Abram, so what do we need to do? Let's just kill Abram. We'll take his wife, take his flocks, possessions, and we're good to go and stuff. And so Abram's life is in danger. Again, Abram was not supposed to be in Egypt in the first place. But anyway, he's there and he goes, okay, got a problem. My wife is beautiful. Pharaoh will want her. So he and Sarah, they concoct a plan. They're going to deceive Pharaoh. They will say, Sarah is my sister. Okay? And technically, they're speaking the truth. Because Sarah was Abram's half-sister. They had the same father, Terah, but they had different mothers. Okay? You had half-brother, half-sister getting married. Okay, so I won't go whether it's right or wrong, but they are just married. But he's not going to say to Pharaoh, we're married. He's going to just say, this is my sister. You want her? Okay, that's fine. And they agree to do this. So he's operating out of fear. He's not operating out of faith. Abraham is considered the father of faith. We'll see later why he's given that title, but this does not qualify him to be the father of faith. Instead, he says, hey, here's my sister, and take her. Now, you may go, well, it's just a white lie. White lies are worse than really bad lies. Why is that? A bad lie deceives the person you're lying to, but it doesn't deceive you who's doing the lying. You know it's a lie. After a while, when you tell enough white lies, not only do you deceive the other person, you deceive yourself. And before you know it, you're telling lies and don't even realize you're lying. That's how bad it can get. So don't go that route. Always speak the truth in love, but speak truth and do not lie. At this point, Pharaoh takes Sarah and he's going to bless Abraham. He says, here, Abram, here are some more flocks, here are some more servants. I'm making you even a wealthier man. Okay. On the surface, that sounds good. Yes and no. But God goes, I don't think so. When it's all said and done, I'm going to bless Abram. I'm going to give him his child through the wife, Sarah. So God is going to send a plague upon the house of Pharaoh, a very severe plague. And Pharaoh comes to realize he's been lied to, that Sarah may be Abram's half-sister, but she's also his wife. And God has sent this plague because of this deception. Again, now why does God do this? Okay, Sarah can have a child by Abram, but here's the deal. So much of what God is going to be doing with Abram revolves around the son that God is going to give Abram. The identity of the father is going to be very important here. Maybe Sarah and Abram had sex before she went to Pharaoh's household. Pharaoh has sex with her. The child is born. Whose child is it? Maybe Abram's. It may be Pharaoh's. Well, God is going to make sure that Abram knows that the child born to Sarah is going to be Abram's son. So that's one of the major reasons why God is going to do this. Pharaoh, he's not mad at Pharaoh. Pharaoh really didn't do anything wrong. This all falls on Abram and Sarah, but God has made a promise to Abram, and God is committed to carrying out that promise. That's fortunate for Abram. Now, when you look at this, you go, there are two things operating here, one good, one bad. First of all, is that Abram is going to leave Egypt wealthier than he was when he came there. Again, God gave gave Abram these extra servants, male, female servants, give him more cattle, etc. He's a wealthier man as a result of this. God is blessing him. You need to understand this, that God can bless us even when we screw up. Now, that's not the way God wants to bless us. God wants to bless us through our obedience for our sakes. We benefit much better whenever we're responding positively, obediently to God. That's the way God wants to. It gives us that life that God himself is experiencing. But don't ever think that you can screw up God's plan. I like what one post says on Facebook. It says, never believe you can, you mess up God's plan. It can never redeem it. It's you lovely thing. You're not powerful enough to destroy God's plan for your life. You can't do that. So it's all said and done, God uses even this bad situation to bless Abram. But there's a problem as well. Yeah, Pharaoh gave Abram these extra male and female servants, but one of them is an Egyptian slave, female slave. Her name is Hagar. Because of Abram's disobedience to God, going into Egypt rather than staying in Canaan, now there's basically been like a spiritual snake has been brought into the household of Abram. Not Hagar, not talking about her, but the situation now is dangerous for Abram and for Sarah. And we shall see later how this emerges and causes so much problem for Abram and Sarah and for future generations of God's people, the Jews. We'll look at this in another few weeks. See you then.